Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Land Fan Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Colin Murphy. Colin Murphy has been investing in the U.S. since 2008 and has bought and sold over $120 million worth of real estate during that time, including over 350 single-family and flips in the Tampa Bay area and over 100 land flips across Florida. We're going to go ahead and restart that. All right, here we go. In three, two, one. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Land Fan Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Colin Murphy. Colin Murphy has been investing in the U.S. since 2008 and has bought and sold over $120 million worth of real estate during that time, including over 350 single-family fix and flips in the Tampa Bay area and over 100 land flips across Florida. During a 20-plus year career, Colin has experience in a wide range of real estate-related activities, including buy and hold, fix and flip, land investing, note investing, private lending, foreclosure auctions, wholesaling, and marketing to international investors. Originally from Ireland, Colin has lived in many countries and currently resides in Madrid, Spain, with his wife and two children. Colin, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing great. It's an honor to be on your show.
Yeah, we've wanted to have you on for such a long time, and we're so excited that we were able to finally get the times figured out and get you booked on the show. And so you're calling in from Madrid right now, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm calling in from Madrid, so it's 8 p.m. in the evening over here, 2 p.m. Florida time. So yeah, I appreciate your flexibility to work my schedule because I wouldn't be able to speak at your normal times.
We're so excited to have you. International investing is such a huge hot topic amongst many land investors right now. And so let's jump right in with how did you get started in doing land deals?
Like I'm relatively new to land. I've been buying and selling real estate in the property business for 20 plus years, originally over in Europe and promoting real estate over there. And I got into Florida real estate back in 2008, initially promoting condos and then moving on to being a single family fix and flipper. And it was really only during the pandemic that I decided to pivot to land investing. And it's been one of the best decisions of my career so far. And it was at the time, literally just at the start of the pandemic, I split up with long-term business partners, two people I'd been working with for 12 years. And we did a ton of business together and we did really well. And we went through all sorts of ups and downs during those 12 years. But I needed to move on to something new. And we split up. And so I was at a loose end for about a year. I did a podcast to keep myself busy. I did a few flips on my own, but I was really looking for something that I could do myself, that I could scale and that I could do from overseas. I was living in Tampa, Florida at the time. We'd relocated there for 4 years to grow the single family fix and flip business, but we were relocating back to Spain again. And one day I was, as you do, I just listening to podcasts, real estate podcasts, looking for ideas. And I heard Alicia Jarrett, who you just mentioned a few minutes ago. I think she was on Ori Tipster. Here's this Australian lady who's flipping land in Florida, and not only that, but has some marketing software that can help other people do the same. And I just had a bunch of ding dings going off in my head. And I'm like, this seems like tailor-made for me. I can apply a bunch of my real estate skills to this. And buying and selling land has got way less moving parts than buying and selling houses. So I just dove right in. I did research for a few weeks and then I just dove in with, I don't know, about 2 or 3 thousand letters. I was lucky enough to get a couple of deals relatively quickly. And I just kept scaling up and up every quarter, just targeting more people, bigger deals, more counties. And I've just kept running at it from there.
Yeah, that is fantastic. What a story. And so cool that you got inspired hearing Alicia Jarrett's story. We're a huge fan of Alicia Jarrett here at Only Land Fans. And can you tell us, how did you learn? You mentioned listening to some podcasts, but did you have a mentor? Did you go through any type of official courses or anything like that?
No, I didn't have, I had a lot of real estate experience. I bought and sold a lot of properties. So I knew how to do due diligence on deals. I had a real estate license, so I knew how to use the MLS. I looked up some old Jack Bosch materials, for example. I looked at the Ori Tipster website and a few months, and obviously Alicia at Supercharged does a little bit of hand holding as well. But I really accelerated. I joined Travis's King's course.
Mhm.
I got some one-on-one time with him, and that helped me a lot. He's got a little land investing community as well. So I was able to accelerate and learn some new strategies with him regarding divides and targeting portfolio owners and a few things like that. So I'm a very kind of curious person by nature, Kendall. So I'm always reading, always networking. I'm not afraid to try new things. I'm not afraid to take action. I'm not afraid to put some money into trying different letter types or different property types or spending time on the phone with buyers and sellers. It was a pretty natural fit for me to transition from being a single family home fix and flipper to going into land. It was quite smooth. And I picked a
Just
good time to do it because the profit margins on the flips were just getting very tight and land was still taking off. So I had a good year and a half where I was doing both. And I would encourage people not to stop cold turkey at whatever they're doing now to do something like land or anything else. There should be some sort of transition period where you're doing your normal thing and you're transitioning into a new thing. And then once you have a kind of a pipeline and a little bit of momentum going, which as can take several quarters of sending letters and putting stuff under contract and marketing it and closing it and starting again. So you need time to get momentum. It isn't like you can start in January and you got a ton of cash in February or March. There's a longer cash conversion cycle than that. So I had that transition period. I had the luxury of that transition period. And then just when single families were getting just terrible, my last two flips, I made $10,000 and they were both needed over $250,000 in cash each to make a $10,000 profit. And I was like, woof, I'm glad I've got land to move on to. I wouldn't want to keep doing this.
Yeah, wow, that's a great piece of advice. And I think that's such a fantastic look at the reality and making sure that you align expectations, that it will take a little bit of time for you to have that on ramp before you start really getting full pipelines and you getting momentum in your land business. So that is definitely a fantastic piece of advice. Talk to us a little bit about what your very first deal was like in the land space.
Yeah, sure. It was, let me see. If I'm being honest, I still own my very first deal. I haven't
It was
sold it
that
yet.
good.
No, it's a funny one. I'll tell you about it if you want, but it was in
Yes.
Pasco County in Spring Hill, Florida. It was an acre of land. I bought it for $12,000. I thought it might be worth 25 or 30. And I was living not too far from there at the time. So naturally I drove there to have a look at it. And it was a little bit of a rough area. And one of these places where the neighbors come out with barking dogs as soon as you park a car saying, "Who are you and what are you doing here? I don't know you." My Irish accent helped a little bit there to calm him down and chill him out a bit. And he gave me a tour of the lot and explained what was going on. And that was all good. But he had a barn encroaching on my lot line. And I made an agreement that I would give him some money to move it and then build a fence. But it was such an old, dilapidated barn that as soon as you give it a nudge, it was going to collapse. So it was just in limbo. And I was also told by the county that it was zoned AC agricultural and it needs to be 10 acres plus to put a house on it. So I just thought, okay, I've just bought a 1 acre field that you can't even put a house on. And now it's not even worth 12,000. And there's a barn across the lot line. So I just sat on it for a few years. And thankfully I got other deals that came and went quickly and got me some money. But I just had my virtual assistant ring Pasco zoning literally this week after sitting in his lot for nearly 3 years and say, ask him again about the zoning. And she did. And this is the good thing about building regular communications with these zoning people, because my VA emails these guys all the time with questions. So they know who we are. And he replied quickly and goes, you know what, Jen? I just noticed that something was grandfathered in from 1974. So actually you can put a house on this lot. And so now it's
Ah.
gone from being worth 12 or 13,000 to probably worth 50 or 60. And I paid 12 for it. I was delighted with that. And I still need to I'm probably going to have to get code compliance out to that guy to get a demolition order on the barn because he's not cooperating. I sent a wetland guy out there and he got chased away. So that was by far the weirdest kind of deal I did, and it just happened to be the first one. The second, third, and fourth were very straightforward deals where I bought them for 8 or 9 thousand and sold them very quickly, like within 30, 40 days for roughly double what I paid for them. So that I got off to the races pretty quickly, and pretty quickly is within 6 months, I was making back what I'd spent on marketing and building some momentum.
That is fantastic. So sounds like lots of lessons learned, especially in that very first deal. What were some of the biggest takeaways that you took from those very first couple of deals in comparison to what you were used to doing in the single family area?
Yeah, you learn more from your mistakes, right, than you do from other people's mistakes or from the deals that are easy. I learned a little bit about due diligence for that deal that you really need to check very carefully. Don't just buy a deal without knowing what it's zoned for and double checking with the zoning if that's the case. Sometimes because you bought other lands in that area in that subdivision and it's a half an acre, it's zoned R4. Okay, that's good. Sometimes it's clear, and that's again that comes with a little bit of experience. But at the beginning, you need to double check all this stuff. The people in zoning are pretty friendly and cooperative and respond quickly. Flood zones and wetlands are super important in Florida. If you might think you've got a deal, but if there's wetlands all across the front of it or through the middle, you're you're in big trouble because you can't build on it. And if you can't build on it, then it's worth a lot less money. So just double, there's only 5 or 6 things really you need to check in Florida that will get you out of 90% of the problems. So once you know what those are and you can teach a virtual assistant to do them, you'll stay out of a lot of trouble. But in terms of comparing it to what we learned in single family homes, single family homes are generally they're a lot more complicated. There's a lot more moving parts. We're coordinating. Like I used to buy stuff at foreclosure auctions where you have to pay or you're bidding 100, you're bidding six-figure sums for properties. And if you win the auction at 11 in the morning, you have to pay the full price at 4 o'clock that afternoon. And you can't get inside the house. You don't know what's going on with the title. You have to research that stuff yourself. So there's the title issues that I had to get through. You might be peeking through a window, they might be occupied. Even if you get a clean, empty house, you have to estimate the roofs, what's the kitchen going to cost, what's the floors going to cost, are there any subsidence issues, are there any permitting issues, are there any code enforcement issues? So it's a whole other world. Buying a piece of land for 20,000 and selling it for 35 or 40 is a piece of cake compared to buying a suburban house and fixing it up and selling it. You can get good at both and you can systemize both, and both can get boring, and you can be doing 7 or 8 of each a month. So everything is systemizable, but land was refreshingly simple compared to all of the stuff we dealt with in houses. And don't even get me started on the people that buy the houses and all the headaches you can get on the appraisals and the property inspections and all of that, which generally isn't a problem with land.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah. I also like to consider myself part of that reformed single family house
Okay.
type of investor. And I know that when I found land, it was like, oh my gosh, it was heaven because I didn't have to deal with hardly half of the issues that we were dealing with houses. So definitely get that. So
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier that you had gone through a little bit of education about subdivides as well as just other types of rural recreational property. What
Mm.
types of deals are you doing now? What would you consider to be your bread and butter? Is it a mix of subdivides and infill lots, or what does your business model look like right now?
Yeah, I'm always moving forward. I'm always trying to climb the ladder. I started doing regular kind of quarter acre vacant residential land that was had tax values of less than $15,000. That was literally my first marketing campaign, just pretty simple stuff and buy it for 10, sell it for 18. And I slowly moved up to bigger and bigger lots and bigger tax values. And once you do that, you obviously can make, I think about 9 or 10 months after I started, I bought like 11 lots in a row from a person in Minnesota for $100,000 and sold them 2 weeks later to a mobile home builder for $200,000. So that was an eye opener for me. So holy cow, if I can get bigger lots and I can actually sell them to mo mobile home builders or builders instead of just your regular kind of mom and pop buyers. Another one was I learned how to do owner finance notes. So I had some money tucked away from all the fix and flips I'd done over the years. So I was in a position to originate my own notes where I might buy something for 25 and sell it for 50 with a $20,000 deposit and a $30,000 owner finance note where they can pay me back $400 a month for 15 years. And the first few years, it's 80% interest. You might be increasing your profit margin from 25,000 to 45,000, and you're getting all your money back within the first 6 or 7 months anyway because of the big down payments. That was a big eye opener, and I didn't have those kinds of skills in house flipping, for example, but that's something that's pretty easy to do with land flipping when you've got most of your profit margin baked into a 40 or 50% down payment. So that was amazing. And then more recently, I've moved into entitlement where you're which I'm sure where you're getting a bigger piece of land. It could be 5 acres, 10 acres, 15 acres. And rather than have it as one parcel, you're dividing it into, I have two deals I'm working on at the moment. One is a 5 acre lot that I'm trying to get the highest and best use. I think is going to be 20 parcels, so 20 half-acre parcels basically, or 20 quarter-acre parcels. And in order to do that, again, you need to learn a bunch of new skills. And I try and find people that are a few steps ahead of me. And I learn from them, okay, you need to get a boundary survey, a topographical survey, a phase one engineering report, a wetland survey. You need to get an engineer to engineer the site and submit permits and get it replatted. And it's like a 6 or 7 or 8 month process. We have this lot that I have under contract for $250,000. And if I get all of that work done, which is really just moving paperwork in a circle for 6 or 7 months, it could be worth 750. And I don't have to take it down until I've done that. So I've just paid a $5,000 deposit. I'm going to be paying maybe $60,000 in due diligence costs, but you could be looking at a profit margin of over $500,000. So that's 9 to 1 return on your investment if you're able to be patient with it and again do your initial due diligence. And then a similar one over on Palm Beach, where it's 14 acres that we have under contract. And again, that could be subdivided into 40 or 50 lots, and you can make substantial 6 figure profits or even 7 figure profits doing that. So that's something I'm super excited about this year because I haven't exited any of them yet, but I'm hoping to exit 2 this year. And I'm hoping to add more of them to my pipeline in the coming months. And it just goes to show you, Kendall, you think land is straightforward, that you buy a piece of land and you sell it, but there's a whole world out there. There's a whole world of things you can do with a piece of dirt that I had no clue about 3 years ago, and that I'm continually surprised and continually learning, often from people way younger than me that are just killing it in land. And I've joined real estate masterminds, and that's how you find out about a lot of these types of deals, and where you're sharing information with people that have done it and have made lots of money and are happy to JV with other guys, do joint ventures with other guys. So yeah, long may it continue.
Yeah, that is absolutely fantastic. Super excited for you about getting into the entitlement space. I know that like you said, it's some really exciting margins whenever those types of
Yeah.
deals do work out. And right there with you, completely agree. And there's definitely magic that is made in a lot of these masterminds. And I look back at my career, and every time I've taken a giant step, it's because of something that I learned in a mastermind. Definitely a fan of those. So, are you currently raising capital for some of these larger deals that you're doing? Are you doing all of this through either lenders or self-funding?
It's mostly self-funding, and I haven't had to take them down yet. I'm able to fund the entitlement costs myself, which is generally, it could be anything. The 5 acre side I just mentioned, that's 60 or $70,000 in phases. I have a lot. When I did all the house flips, I generally borrowed money from private lenders, Tampa-based private lenders, which were an extended, basically friends of mine that I cultivated in Tampa, like tennis buddies, guys that you meet in trivia, people that are friends of your CPA. So I've got access to 6 or 7 lenders in the Tampa Bay area, that I know socially, I know personally, that I meet for coffees and dinner whenever I travel over there, that are in a position to lend me relatively significant 6 figure sums if and when I need it. And I certainly will need it for those entitlement deals, particularly the second one, which is a much higher purchase cost and has a much higher entitlement one. So I will be borrowing money from private lenders further down the line. But all of the individual land flips that I've done over the last few years, I've just funded those out of my own cash. I also have a credit line, business credit line from Chase, which is quite reasonable. I think it's prime plus 2%, which is roughly 10%, 10.5% now. So that's a lot easier than borrowing money from private lenders where you have to secure it with the first mortgage and release it again. Having a business credit line is a very straightforward way of boosting your cash if and when you need it. It's a little bit like a home equity line of credit, but it's for a business. So I have one of those in place that I'll probably use for the first time in about 2 months' time. But I took it out in May last year, and it's given me some peace of mind. It doesn't cost a lot of money to maintain it.
That's fantastic. You mentioned that you've built relationships with private lenders. Can you dig in a little bit more to that and tell us, how do you go about having these kinds of conversations? What do you say to people just to see if they're interested in lending on some of your deals?
Yeah, I attended some presentations on this topic at a real estate mastermind. I wish I had a better memory because there's a whole way of doing it. And there's guys out and there's books out there and there's podcasts out there on raising private money. And obviously it's not, you don't just go up to someone and goes, hey, can you give me $100,000 for a deal? You have to be a little bit more subtle. And you have to build the relationships ideally ahead of time. You don't want to make them purely transactional. You want them to be kind of relationship based, where just we obviously you need to be hanging, you need to be moving in those circles. We're with high net worth individuals, and you can do that obviously in masterminds. You can do it in the Rotary Club. You can do it in church groups. You can do it in your local tennis club, your Y gym. There's people always say, "What do you do?" And you can say, "I'm a real estate investor. I help people get a higher return on their cash." And that's the kind of great opening. Oh, you help people get a higher return on your cash. What do you mean? Because we raise money for real estate deals all the time, and we pay people a high rate of return secured against a safe real estate asset. And you just leave it like that, and they'll generally say, tell me more. And so you just talk to them about it. Um, and they'll generally express an interest. Or you can say, hey, if you ever know anybody that wants to get a high return on, if you ever know anybody that has some cash and is not happy with the return they're getting and would be interested in getting a higher return secured against real estate, would you ask them to call me? And you might be talking to a person you think is good for it, but you don't ask them. You just say, if you know anybody who wants to get a higher return on their investment secured by real estate, would you introduce them to me? I'd be really grateful if you could. And sometimes you say, well, I've actually got some money sitting in my IRA. Tell me a bit more. And then you'll say, let's meet for a coffee, or do you want to hop in a car and I'll drive you across and show you a couple of deals, and show you some of the houses we've renovated, or I'll show you I'll send you you should have some sort of package ready. Here's the last. And obviously, full stop, don't go borrowing loads of money on your first deal. Do get a couple of deals under your belt with your own money before. You want to show that you've put your own money where your mouth is, and that you've got a little bit of experience before you start asking for money. So don't try and kind of experiment with other people's. But once you've got a couple of deals under your belt, and it could be small deals, and you just want to move a little bit higher up the ladder, then put a little package together saying, here's my last 5 deals, here's how the numbers work, here's the copies of the HUD statements, here's some photos, here's how long it took me to sell them, here's what I'm thinking about doing for you, and just take it from there. And it can be, it's something you have to do in advance. It's a little bit of work, but if you can do it, if you can, and the great thing about it is, if sometimes getting one guy to lend you money and you pay him back and you meet socially every now and again for a lunch or something, he'll introduce you to a bunch of other people. Many of my lenders were introduced to me by 1 or 2 people. There's a lot of the similar people hang out together. So if you do well by one person who might be an accountant or a doctor, or might be some wealthy South American who lives in Tampa and he hangs out with other wealthy South Americans who hang out in Tampa, then suddenly you get introduced to a little network, and you can become their go-to guy whenever they have some money they need to put to good use.
Yeah, that's really great advice. That's great advice. Thank you for sharing that. So, one of the things that I think so many of us love about the land business is that it can be done remotely, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things about the business, lots of components about the business that lend itself to being able to being run entirely remotely. And I think one of the biggest testaments to that is the fact that you actually live in Spain and you're doing deals in Florida. So can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what are some of the challenges that you have found with your current setup in terms of living overseas, flipping land in the US? What were some of those challenges and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, it probably sounds cooler than it is that I live in Spain. Living in Spain is cool. I'm not saying it's not, but it probably sounds more impressive than it is, because how many land guys live somewhere else than where they're flipping land, where someone's living in the Boston area and they're flipping land in Arizona, or living in Michigan and flipping land in Florida. What I'm doing isn't too different from that. They're nowhere near where they're flipping land, neither am I. But even when I was living in Tampa, I'm buying land 100 miles away. I wasn't driving there. I wasn't going to see a field with a bunch of trees on it. I mean, I had no
Right.
intention of doing that. And it's just the great thing about land. The stuff you need to know, a lot of it you can look up online. You're looking at flood zones, wetlands, dimensions, zoning, comps, what similar ones sold for. You can send a photographer out there to take photos. You can put it under contract with a long closing period and then maybe stick a for sale by owner sign out there to get local people to give you a call. And sometimes they'll tell you stuff that you didn't know about the land and never would have found out. Sometimes your prospective buyers can find out due diligence stuff for you that you never would have found out. I had one recently which I had under contract for $70,000 and I was going to sell it for 120 and I thought it was a good deal. And I put a sign, I got a photographer out there to take photos, and then I pay him a little extra to get a sign at Home Depot and just stick it in the yard saying Colin Murphy 727, whatever. And you just learn stuff doing that. And people rang me and said, "Did you know that there's a highway being built right behind this lot?" I'm like, "What? There's a highway? I did not know that. I don't think I'm going to
Wow.
spend $70,000 on it now. Thank you for telling me." That's a really good tip, by the way. What else? You asked me about challenges living. Obviously, there's some challenges not being in the States, living, being a non-US resident. Whereas before I had everything going through an S corp, which is a nice tax efficient flow through entity. When I moved to Spain, I had to put it into a C corp. And obviously, I'm not an accountant or CPA. That's just what I had to do for my situation. I had to put it in a C corp. You have to pay, I have to declare taxes in my C corp. I have to pay taxes on the assets I have in my name in the US, like rental properties. I obviously have to pay tax on my income in Spain. And obviously, I don't take all the money out of the company. I leave some of it in there, pay myself a comfortable salary. So you need a good CPA. You need a good CPA on both sides of the water if you're living in a different country. But again, these are minor things in the bigger picture in terms of the benefit you can get from living overseas and the experiences you can have living overseas. You need, obviously, I use Ring Central for my phones. I had my US cell phone ported to Ring Central, so I kept my number. I'm able to do text messages, phone calls. I bought extra numbers, was able to get my VA set up with those. They've got a pretty sophisticated kind of call center type stuff where you can do call forwarding, call waiting, calls moving one way or the other after a certain time of the day, and so on. So that was really important. I use traveling mailbox to get all of my mail. I send out a lot of letters and I include a business reply mail where you can put the letter in a prepaid envelope and send it back to it gets into my virtual address. It gets scanned. So I have a virtual assistant logging in every morning to see if we got any contracts returned or any offers returned. So traveling mailbox was key. Having access to the MLS was really useful for me. I got my realtor's license during the pandemic, sometime during 2020. That was good for me to be able to list my own lots was handy. I still sell most of my land on the MLS, and realtors just bring you an offer and they tend to be a little bit higher caliber buyers than what you get on land.com or landflip.com or some of those other places, which is good. And it's also easier to run comps if you have the MLS. You can run comps on Zillow and a bunch of other places, but MLS is very handy. And I'm on Stellar MLS, which gives you, I think, about 35 out of the 65 counties in Florida. So that was enough for me for 2 years of mailers, just going through those 35 counties. It gave me some extra tools in the toolbox that ordinary non-MLS people might not have. I still could have done all that without the MLS, but it made it a lot easier to get started and get things listed and so. But overall, living overseas is doable. I work from 11 in the morning Spanish time to about 7 in the evening, which is like 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. Florida time. So I'm not working and I'm not taking phone calls at 11 at night or midnight. I have two assistants that answer phones from 9 to 6 Florida time and a call service that takes messages after that. You don't need to be on hand to do all that stuff. And I found it to be fine. I'm able to manage it okay. Like I used to be bidding on auctions from Spain to buy houses anyway. Buying land is fine. I have an attorney in Florida who's got a power of attorney to sign warranty deeds on my behalf when I'm selling lots or release owner finance mortgage notes and things like that. That was important to have that. I could use Notary Cam or some of those online things, which some title agents are good with and some can be a bit of a pain with, but it's easier just to have an attorney do it, where I just approve a HUD statement, which is just a 2-page statement saying what's coming in, what's going out, what's my net. I'll approve that, and then the attorney goes through the rigmarole of printing all the pages, signing it, getting the notaries, getting the 2 witnesses, all that stuff. So that was a game changer, just getting that done and just paying that person a fixed fee per closing, and then they get some big bucks every now and again if I need to pay for some probate or some quiet title or something like that. But overall, you shouldn't let living far away or even living overseas and there's other people doing this. I know people that are doing land from overseas in Canada and South America. There's some digital nomads that are just traveling nonstop and flipping land that I've met at masterminds. So it's totally doable, and anybody that's thinking about doing it just needs to reach out to me or like-minded people, and it's totally doable. And so is living in New York and flipping land in Florida is also totally doable. And there's plenty of people that can give you advice on how to get that set up as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's just one of the coolest things about the land space for sure. So diving into a few of the nuts and bolts of your business, can you talk about how it sounds like you've been in Florida for quite some time doing both homes and land, but how do you go about choosing target markets that maybe you're not so familiar with and evaluating those markets?
Yeah, I've mostly stuck with Florida for the reasons I just explained, that it's easier for me to underwrite deals in Florida. I've bought some owner finance notes in other states, and I'm open to doing deals in other states. But I lived in Tampa, Florida for 4 years, and I was doing maybe single family flips for 3 of those years and land for 2 of those years or something like that. So I wasn't there that long, but long enough to make some good contacts and get some good relationship with title agents and bankers and so on. But my advice is just keep it simple. Just target suburban and rural vacant residential lots. So I avoid densely populated areas like Tampa, like Miami, like Orlando, like Jacksonville that are just extremely expensive, where you're going to be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars an acre. And it's just not practical for the vast majority of people, including me, to be doing deals in those areas. But if you're in the suburbs and in the rural areas and you're staying with residential, so you're not getting involved with industrial or commercial. And I know some people do recreational where they're buying 30-acre lots for $20,000 that are good for hunting or camping or whatever. But I prefer to stick with residential where you can build a home. So I'm sticking with lots that have road access, preferably paved road access, but I have bought lots on dirt tracks. But there has to be electric running up the street. So there has to be, that's key for me. It has to be a normal person can put a normal house on that lot. It could be public water and sewer, it could be well and septic. I don't mind about that, but obviously you need to know in advance. But if you stick with those kind of areas, quarter acre to 10 acres, vacant residential, power on the street, paved road access, zoned for single family mobile homes, manufactured homes, whatever it is, then you're playing it pretty safe. And again, there's a big difference between a quarter acre in a built out suburb or 2 acres in the middle of nowhere, but neither of them are particularly difficult to value. If you're generally speaking, if you're buying land at or close to its assessed tax value, it's difficult to lose money on it. Certainly my average sales prices have been 2 to 3 times the assessed tax value. That's just a very broad rule of thumb, but it generally holds true in a lot of cases. So that's how I would advise people to start, and you can scale quite a bit just even within those parameters. I had 50, 60 deals under my belt before I started moving into things that could be subdivided or combined or targeting portfolio owners and things like that. You can make several $100,000 just buying and selling those lots, for buying for 20 to 30. I would avoid buying the really cheap stuff like $1,000, $2,000, because you're competing against a huge amount of people with no money. And the people that buy those lots are often tire kickers and time wasters and not super reliable buyers. But if you can get a little bit above that, where you're buying lots for kind of 7,000 plus, then you're off to the races, and you can get some good money very quickly. It's very hard if you're doing 10 deals and you're making $1,500 or $2,000 on a deal. You're working very hard and you're not earning a whole lot of money. Certainly not enough money to quit your job. But if you start buying for 7, selling for 15, buying for 10, selling for 18, and you slowly get some scale going and move up the ladder at your own pace, then you can suddenly be at a place like, holy cow, I made $100,000 last year doing this, and maybe I can do 150 or 200 this year. Now we're into kind of life-changing decision. But anybody can do it. You don't need to be, this is real estate. You don't need to be a genius. This isn't rocket science. You don't need any advanced education to do this. It's adding and subtracting. There's no calculus. There's no crazy equations here. It's adding and subtracting numbers. You can teach yourself how to value stuff. You can get educated for a few $100. It's a ton of books, a ton of podcasts, a ton of these videos like this helping people as well. So and none of this stuff was available. I'm 44. None of this was available when I was in my 20s and early 30s trying to figure out how to make money in real estate. I only started making what I would call real money in the last 5, 6 years when this technology exploded. And also I started going to masterminds.
Hey there, land fans. If you're enjoying this episode and would like to see more episodes like this, please be sure to let us know by liking and subscribing below.
Love it. Love it. So you talked a little bit about the criteria that you look for. What are some of those 5 to 6 things that you mentioned that you try to stay away from in Florida in terms of the properties that you come across?
Yeah, wetlands is a big one. I use Land ID to filter for that. It's a software that I don't know, I think I pay 10 or 15 bucks a month for having access to maps on the whole state of Florida. It's very good value on that. If there's wetland across the front of a lot, you just can't build on it. The amount of money you'd have to pay the county to let you build on it would be astronomical. It wouldn't be worth it in 99% of cases. So be careful about wetlands. And you can see them even on the satellite maps where the shrubbery turns from dark green to light green or brown. And obviously, if it's a swamp or something, then it's different. Sometimes lots have canals running diagonally right across them. You just can't build in the middle of a canal. So be careful about that. Be careful about road access. Obviously, a landlocked lot is worth nowhere near as much as a lot with road access. If there's no access to the lot, it's worth way less. And I've sold a couple of lots with no road access, but only because I got stuck with them because someone had 3 or 4 lots to sell and said, I'm only going to sell you this nice one if you buy these crappy ones as well, because I don't want them anymore. And I said, okay. And you just get rid of them for a nominal amount. But otherwise, it's not really worth the hassle for me. So make sure there's road access. Find out about utilities. Utilities can be very important. I once had a lot that was in a suburban area, pretty built out, but it turns out, and it's all zoned for public water and sewer, so you're not allowed to put a well or septic in this location. It was in the city of New Smyrna Beach. And it turns out the sewer line stopped about 60 yards before my lot. And to get them extended to my lot would cost, tens and tens of thousands of dollars, maybe $80,000, and lots maybe worth 40. Utilities are important. You need to know that info. Again, you just X county utilities, you ring them up. Can you give me some information on this parcel ID? And sometimes they say, oh, that's not Volusia County. That's the city of New Smyrna Beach. So then you have to ring the city of New Smyrna Beach. But you can find it out. And obviously, if you have a VA, even better, because otherwise you spend a lot of time running around. But utilities are important. Access is important. Wetlands are important. Be careful about flood zones. Know if it's in a flood zone or not. It's generally worth a little bit less if it's in a flood zone in Florida. And then the zoning, is it zoned agricultural? Is it zoned residential? There's websites that can tell you. You can see zoned R4. What does R4 mean? You can look it up. You go Volusia County zoning, or Municode is a website, MUNICOD, Municode, Volusia, Florida, Municode, Pasco County, Florida, and they do that in multiple states. So you should bookmark all these things in your web browser. You're targeting one county, then 2, then 3, then 4. I have folders where I have links to the tax appraiser's website. You can see who owns it, what they bought it for, the zoning, the utilities, and you can save all this information so that you can obviously readily access it afterwards. And I think that's covering the main ones, Kendall. Just those are I think I gave you 4 or 5 things to look out for that will, and the great thing about them, they're very easy to systemize. They're very teachable. Like this, looking up all those things I just told you is a $10 an hour task. And if you're building a business, you should always look to outsource as many and preferably all of your $10 an hour tasks to someone else so that you're not spending 30 or 40 minutes trying to find out if something's on sewer or septic, but it's important that somebody finds out.
Definitely. And so you mentioned that you had a couple of VAs. Can you talk a little bit about the structure of your company in terms of your team and who's on your team and what do they do?
My team is super small. My previous company with the 2 business partners was a bit bigger. We did 90 houses, flipped 90 houses in our big year, so we had a decent team of people. And when I split from those, I was a little bit burned out because it's a lot of stress buying 8 houses every month and selling 8 houses every month and all the stuff that goes on with the permits and appraisals and inspections and contractors. So when I set up Land a couple of years ago, I said, okay, let's just do this small. I was like a one-man band for a couple of months while I figured out my groove and what pace I wanted to do with that. And then I got one VA for 4 or 5 or 6 months, I think, full time. And then they left, just disappeared on me. And I decided to hire two more full time to replace them. And so now it's just me and two full time VAs. And one of them is mostly on the admin side. So they do all of the due diligence I just described, like ringing counties for different things. They draw up contracts when we're going to make offers. I taught her to be pretty good at comping lots. So that she comps lots that come in, checks the mail, processes the mail, keeps the spreadsheets updated with properties that are coming in and going out, and helps me coordinate the sales. The other one is more a lead processor. So there we send a lot of text messages with launch control. So they're always responding to launch control text messages. We do cold calling. We do a lot of ringless voicemail. So there's always phone calls coming in. There's all the leads that come in through the email, through the letters. They all have to be called and processed. That person also schedules calls on my calendar. So I log in the morning, and I use Pebble as my CRM, which is a very popular CRM for land people. And I've got leads in all these columns. So leads coming in, VAs done their due diligence, Colin's due diligence, offer sent, offer accepted, and so on. So we just move through the different phases. So I can log in. If we've made an offer on a certain subdivision before, the VA just automatically makes a similar offer again. If it's a brand new subdivision, I have a rule where I get her to use a comp, get 3 comps, pick the average of them, and offer that amount unless it's lower than the tax value, in which case just offer the tax. So they make 20, 25 offers a week generally without me getting involved. And then I'll generally underwrite maybe 2 or 3 deals a day that were a little bit trickier for them to comp, and then I'll get them to make offers on those. And if somebody's responded to us saying, I want 50,000 for this lot, and if I think that's a good deal, I'll get the VA schedule me a call with this person. So I'm not just going to ring them and say, can you talk now about the 50K? I'll get them to schedule them on my calendar. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I can bunch calls within a certain time, generally whatever, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Florida time. I try and get all my calls with buyers and sellers scheduled in that window. Number two, it makes me sound more important than I am, that they're ringing to schedule a call for the president of the company.
Yes, yes. I love it. I
Uh,
love it.
and number three, they're there. They've got a call and they get reminders on their email. You've got your call in an hour. You've got your call in 30 minutes. So they're generally answering, and they're generally prepared to talk about it and so on. So that works very well. So I have a title agent who's wonderful, who does the majority of my deals on the buy side, on the sell side, and she acts as a quasi closing coordinator for me. So I don't need to hire a closing coordinator. And I mentioned I have an attorney who helps me out a lot with all the selling. And other than that, I don't need, obviously, I got photographers that I send out, or the VA sends them out. So it's mostly vendor relationships. It's me and my little team is just me and 2 VAs. I am seriously thinking about hiring an acquisitions manager this quarter, somebody who's in between me and the VAs in terms of processing leads, somebody who can convert a warm lead to a hot lead, because I don't really have time to talk to as many sellers as I would like. So I'm really only getting the guys that go from cold to hot very quickly, and then I'll close them. But I could do with someone else who's a professional, ideally an American person, to spend 4 or 5 hours on the day converting those warm leads into hot leads. So that's next on my priority list. But I want a small team. Land is one of those things you can earn a lot of money without having big scale. Like I said, you can do 20 deals where your profit is $30,000 in each one, or 20 deals where your profit is $2,000 in each one. Is roughly the same amount of work. So I know what I'd rather do. And I like having a work-life balance where I'm living in Spain. I've got 2 teenage kids, got young 13 and 11. I like going to the gym. I like hanging out with people. I like doing stuff with my wife. So the rhythm of my life determines the rhythm of the business, and not the other way around. I like to have a real balance where I've never been a workaholic. I try and be very efficient with my time when I'm at my desk, but Land has enabled me to achieve a reasonable amount of financial freedom without running myself into the ground, where I have a business that I can work 5 or 6 or 7 hours a day. I was able to take off over Christmas, for example, for 2.5 weeks. And I probably did about 5 hours work during those 2.5 weeks, because I went to Ireland for 6 days, and then I brought my family to Florida for for almost 2 weeks. And obviously I could check in on stuff while I was on it. But again, I didn't want to. I wanted to really enjoy and be present. And land gives you an opportunity to do that the way you can't if you're working for a bigger company, if you're answerable to a boss, if somebody's pestering you, come to this meeting, come to this Zoom call, do this, do that, have this on my desk by Friday. I'm very anti all of that. If my buddy Javier could ring me in an hour and say, Colin, do you want to play golf tomorrow morning? And I'd say yes. Let's do it. The land gives me that kind of freedom. So I've always avoided building a big business with 10, 15, 20 people and a lot of moving parts and millions of dollars coming in and millions of dollars going out. I'd rather keep it small, and land is flexible enough that you can earn a very comfortable amount of money to live whatever life you need to.
Absolutely. That's absolutely fantastic. So you mentioned a few different marketing methods, ringless voicemail, texting, mail. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your marketing flow looks like on the acquisition side in your business?
The kind of anchor to it is supercharged offers where they do my direct mail. So I do about 10,000 letters a month with those guys roughly, which are letters, kind of 2-page letters with a kind of a fake check on it and a 1-page intro letter and then a 1-page contract where I'm inviting them to write in what they think is a reasonable amount of money and then sign it and put it in a prepaid envelope and send it back to me. So I get a bunch of those. Obviously, a lot of them are saying, I want $300,000 for my $30,000 lot. You get a little bit of that.
Right.
But sometimes you just get a great deal or sometimes you negotiate. And then I send those guys generally 3 letters. So I'll send them like week 1, week 5, week 9. People need to be touched multiple times before they respond. If you've only got $10,000 or if you've only enough money for 10,000 letters, I think you're better off sending 3,500 letters 3 times to that group of people rather than sending 10,000 once and then never hear from you again. So I send it to people 3 times. And then I also I skip trace that list and upload it on launch control, and I send them text messages as well. So where it's, and obviously the rules change a lot, but it's roughly is, hey, we're buying and selling land in Volusia County. If you'd like us to chat to you about your land, let us know. That kind of light kind of touch, or please reply yes if you're interested or whatever. And if you can get a little bit of interaction going that way, great. We'll also leave a voicemail where I'll be my voice to go, hey, this is Colin here. We sent you a letter recently because we're buying land in Volusia County and we'd love to talk to you if you're interested in selling yours. We're a family-owned business. We pay all the closing costs. We make it very easy to convert unwanted plans into cash. If you want to have a quick chat about the value of it, give us a call on 813, blah, blah, blah. So we do a couple of those and that works pretty well. And that's pretty much it. Obviously, I think the supercharged do a little bit of social media stalking as well, where you'll appear on the kind of Google searches and the Facebook profiles of the people that you're sending letters to. So I have a relatively sophisticated marketing campaign, but it's very easy to manage. Frankly, you're sending a few thousand letters a week, and my VAs have a schedule where they know when the letters are sent out to each batch, and then they know when to text that group of people and when to ring that group of people and so on. But that's roughly it. It's direct mail, it's texting, it's calling, and obviously every now and again you get people emailing you as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I know AJ is very big on the omni-channel marketing, and I think that that's definitely where we are in the market today, that these sellers need to have lots of touch points. So it's very cool that you have lots of different types of touch points with them, for sure.
Yeah, and you need to be able to schedule. Sometimes people will say, I'm not in the mood now, but ring me in 2 months. You need a system in place. You need a CRM where you can put a reminder to reach out to them in 2 months. You need to be very proactive. Or if sometimes people will reach out to you with a letter and then they don't answer the phone. You might have to ring them 10 times before they answer you. And with texting them and, hey, we got your letter, give us a call. Hey, thanks for reaching out to us. Can we talk? So again, and it helps if you have systems for your VAs, reach out to them on day 1 with this, day 2 with this, day 4 with this, day 6 with this, day 8 with this, so that again, if you just get a letter and ring once and then the letter's in a pile on your desk, you're going to miss out. Other companies are going to be too far ahead of you. So and again, it's not rocket science. You're just systemizing what can be systemized and scaling what can be scaled. But yeah, multiple omni-channel marketing and then reaching out to prospective buyers and sellers 10, 15, 20 times over several week period until you hopefully get them on the phone.
Excellent. And so that it sounds like you're sending out neutral letters, or are you doing any blind offers at all?
Yeah,
Or
I did literally 150,000 blind offers, and I stopped doing them a few months ago. They worked well for me in from mid 2021 to mid 2023, and then they didn't work so well. People just weren't responding to them as well as they should. Sometimes the offers were too low, sometimes they were too high, but I wasn't the response rate dropped. So I just and initially blind offers suited me because I didn't have VAs, I didn't really have systems in place, and I didn't want to get 30 phone calls saying, "Hey, I've got your letter," asking if I'm interested in selling. And obviously I am if you pay me loads of money. So I didn't want to
right.
get those. I only wanted people that would respond to, "I got your $16,000 offer." So it suited me at the beginning when I didn't have a lot of resources or a lot of processes in place to deal with a large number of inquiries. But then more recently, when I do have that kind of stuff in place, it's easier for me to do a neutral letter. So you're getting a larger amount of inquiries and you're avoiding the people that are saying, "Are you mad offering me 30,000? This is worth 100." Or others, sometimes it's the other way. You're offering me 40 for something that's worth 10. Like, where do I sign? So
Right, right.
neutral worked
Yeah.
well for me, but we need to be careful doing it at the very beginning with a large amount of people because you can get a lot of phone calls.
Definitely. Yeah. I think one of the things that I love the most about neutral letters or any type of neutral marketing is that I at least get to have some kind of voice time with those people, right? Like I get some type of opportunity to be able to nurture, get to know them, negotiate, that kind of thing. If they're my pipeline, then I can have multiple touch points. But if they get my blind offer letter and it's in the trash, then that's it. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna get to them again. Definitely get that, but systems super important. So what are some of the key pieces of advice that you would have for someone that's setting up systems for the very first time?
Try not to, spreadsheets can go pretty far, but I wouldn't try and get a CRM as early as you can, like a database. We're like something like Pebble, which is quite inexpensive and is far less complicated than a big program like Salesforce, for example.
Right.
Just where you can have your different parts of the funnel where lead in, due diligence one, due diligence two, offer made, offer accepted, offer rejected, circle back later, and so on. Just something where you can do that and you can just import your leads in. Every time I get new data, roughly every 3 months, so I just import them in bulk into the CRM, into launch control, into whatever else. Getting a CRM early is very important. Obviously, having a brand, having a website, having an email, having a letter template, having a marketing budget, deciding on how you're going to allocate it, that you don't just decide on a whim on a Friday, "Okay, let's do 3,000 letters." Just have some sort of plan for the next couple of quarters and have an idea of how leads come in, what's going to happen, who's going to input the details into the CRM, who's going to call them first, who's going to do the due diligence on it, and have checklists so that you're not keeping everything in your head. Just have a checklist. Like I said, wetlands, zoning, access, utilities, just have those little things and make sure you or whoever is going through them and that you're laying them out in a certain order so that you can underwrite the deal. It's the 80/20. I try and get my VAs to do the 80% of the work so that when I do the 20% of the work so I can underwrite 5 deals instead of one, as if I was doing everything myself. So get that done and have a good title agent who has your back and knows how you work. Have contracts to buy and sell that are approved and are not just made up or edited by some wholesaler buddy of yours. Just have a proper agreement. And yeah, again, it's not that hard. You can make mistakes at the beginning. You can get analysis paralysis and try and make everything perfect before you start. You don't want to do that either. The only way you really learn is by taking action and making mistakes and moving forward. They're the people that get things done. You always try and take a step back every now and again to see how you can improve things, but you have to have the only way to progress is by taking action and try and develop some resilience because you need it. You need a lot of resilience in real estate. Land is no different. It's more important than being lucky or being intelligent, just being able to keep going when others might get frustrated or upset. Getting a good night's sleep, getting some exercise helps you keep that kind of calmness. Getting up early in the morning so you have a bit of quiet time before the madness hits you is very helpful as well. But just try and develop those habits so that you can attack the day with a strong mindset is super important and super helpful, and have a healthy attitude towards risk, because you need to take risks. Sometimes you just don't know for sure. Is this really worth $30,000? Sometimes you're not 100% sure. Often you're not 100% sure, but if you're not willing to take some risks with your land investing or with anyone else, you'll just end up working for somebody that is.
That's right. That's really good. So many great nuggets in there. In your opinion, what is something that not very many people or no one is talking about in the land industry right now that we should be talking about?
Entitlement is very exciting. We touched on that briefly earlier. It's obviously not for beginners. It's for people that have some deals under their belt or a little bit of experience, but it's not as complicated as people might think to get a 10-acre parcel divided into 20 parcels and make 10x your money. So it's hugely important, because builders just don't want to do entitlement. They want lots presented to them with a bow on top and everything done. So there's life-changing generational money to be made in land entitlement. So if you can move through your first 10, 20, 30 deals and start learning about it could be huge, especially if the market starts slowing down a little bit, and the lots that you used to sell in 60 days are now taking 4 or 5 months, and the ones where you're doubling your money, now you're only getting 30 or 40% more as your margin. Entitlement can be a game changer, but it's not something you want to do on your own. I would encourage everybody, like you alluded to earlier, Kendall, just to hang out with other investors, hang out with people that are further ahead of you, join a mastermind. It could be a virtual one, it could be a presential one, it could be one that costs you $100 a month or $1,500 a month or anything in between. But it's crucial if you want to go fast. With a mastermind, with education, with that stuff, you can do in 2 years what would take you 8 or 9 years on your own, and you can avoid all sorts of mistakes and accelerate through all sorts of hurdles. So that to me is massive. But entitlement was a very big eye opener for me, and I don't see a lot of people talking about. Some people are, but some people try and cloak it in mystery, like this is this elite thing that only super rich people do. That's not the case.
Yeah, I think that could be a whole podcast episode in and of itself, just talking about entitlements. But if someone
Yeah.
is interested in entitlements and they want to start marketing for those types of properties, do you have some rules of thumb? How do you go about looking for
Mhm.
properties that may be good entitlement opportunities?
A really easy one, is it a relatively big lot surrounded by other small lots? Is it a 5-acre lot with lots of half and quarter acre ones right beside it, like across the street or 2 streets over? Or is it a bit of an outlier in its area? Obviously, if it's a 5-acre lot and everything else is a 5-acre lot, then no, it's not an entitlement thing. But if others are already subdivided into small parcels, it's interesting. And it's even more interesting if there are brand new houses being built nearby, like if Islenar or D.R. Horton or somebody building a community nearby. Because if they are, then there's a chance they or one of their competitors could be interested in your one if you get it entitled. Those are pretty easy things to find out by looking at Land ID, or even just looking at Google, or looking at Zillow. You can search for Zillow, search for new houses within a mile. You'll see them, and sometimes they're just little individual spec homes, but sometimes you see a little community or a bunch of houses. That's very interesting as well. So yeah, if you find yourself with a deal, and it doesn't have to be 10 or 20 acres, sometimes it can be 2 acres, and they can be divided into lots that are a sixth of an acre. So now you can potentially put 12 houses on this little 2-acre lot, and that you could be 5 or 7xing the value of it by doing that.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. Colin, what would you consider to be your superpower?
I don't know that I have any superpowers.
Everyone has a superpower.
Yeah, I honestly don't know my superpower. I'm pretty good at developing systems and processes for kind of a virtual remote business. I'm pretty good at running a relatively, I do a lot of volume for the size of my operation. So I'm good at juggling a lot of balls with all of that stuff. I'm very good at analyzing deals. I do it extremely quickly now, but again, that's down to practice. If you do hundreds of them, so I can fly through 10 or 20 or 30 deals in a couple of hours and fire off pretty accurate estimates to them, and have offers out to those guys pretty quickly as well. So,
That's huge. That's huge in our industry, especially. I know that there's a lot of comping land and evaluating potential land deals is a lot is mysterious to a lot of people. And so I think that that is definitely a fantastic superpower to have.
yeah, but it's a skill that can be developed. Obviously, some people are naturally good at it, but anybody can get competent at it, just as anybody can get competent at tennis if you
Sure.
put enough time practicing it.
Yeah, that's really good. Got to get the reps in. And the only way you can do that is by analyzing deals, right?
And you got
Yeah,
it.
really good. So, what's your definition of success?
Being able to live life on your own terms is my definition. Just having the freedom to live where you want and do what you want. For me, that kind of freedom and flexibility is paramount. It's not getting to a big number. It's not getting to X million or Y million. It's more about do I have freedom of time? As in I can do what I want. I can play golf tomorrow morning. Do I have freedom of location? Can I live where I want to live? I'm not stuck at a desk in Miami, Florida doing real estate. I can live wherever I feel like it. So freedom of time, location is crucially important. And then freedom of money. Do I have enough money to support me and my family if something comes up with my health, if I need to take a break for a year or two to look after a sick kid or a sick parent, do I have the freedom of money to do that? So just having those, it's not, again, some people focus too much. I need $1 million in order to do that. I need a 10 of team people and I need to be stuck at this desk and I need to be away in an office 14 hours a day. That's not success for me at all. Success for me is those three things: freedom of time, location, and money.
Beautiful. Love that. And do you have any entrepreneurs, business owners, thought leaders that you like to follow?
I read a lot and I toggle between fiction and nonfiction all the time. There's great podcasts like your one, like Ori Tipster. Bigger Pockets was great for me in my earlier days as well. That's some good stuff in there for more beginner investors. Thought leaders in general, no, not really. I read a lot. I read a lot. I
Yeah.
keep up with the news a lot and economic news, and I network all the time with investors. I have multiple monthly Zoom calls to check in on investors that are doing great. And I love that, comparing notes. And I love going to events every 3 or 4 months to meet people and network with people. And so that's important. Just always be learning, always be open-minded, always be willing to do new things, always be open to helping people as well. And just that kind of go-giver mindset is stood by me very well over the years, because you generally get back a lot more than you put in.
That's really good. What would you consider to be your biggest passion or goal you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
Just to exit 4 or 5 entitlement deals would be life-changing amounts of money for me. You know, you're talking high 6 figures, low 7 figures. If I can exit 4 or 5 of those, you're really set up for life. You've got a huge amount of extra cash you don't need that can be put into passive investments, which will have long-term stability for your family. So that's my big, hairy, audacious goal, for
Yeah.
2024 is exit multiple entitlement deals and put multiple more in the pipeline and just be. I'd love to be in a place in 3 or 4 years' time where obviously you're completely work optional and you're just doing it because of the people you're working with and the differences you're making in those communities where you're entitling those deals, and potentially moving into horizontal and vertical development. Horizontal being the next stage where you're putting in roads and sewer lines and water lines and then handing that over to a builder, or vertical where you're building the actual properties or townhomes or apartments or whatever. And again, I would love to do that just for the fun of figuring out how it works and how it's done, and the satisfaction of building homes for people rather than the money. The money comes afterwards from doing all that stuff well.
Yeah, that's very cool. Colin, I want to thank you so much for giving to us today. Are there any connections or resources that you're looking for currently? How can we give back to you right now?
Nothing immediately that comes to mind. I'm happy to network with people in your community. If anyone wants to reach out to me on Facebook, you'll find me. I guess you tagged me on this. It's Colin Investment on Facebook. So you'll find me there. And anybody that has some deals they want to share or do joint ventures on, or some advice they want to ask me, I'm open to talking to them. But I don't have an immediate need right now. But if I have, I'll certainly post it on your community, and I'm sure somebody will be happy to help.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Colin. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Colin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and spending a Thursday afternoon with us. It's just been really fun to hang with everyone. So, Colin, thank you. Thank you for watching, and take care. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. If you're interested in hearing from other 6- and 7-figure land flippers about how they've built and run their businesses, then check out my group, OnlyLandFans, where I do a live interview each week inside the group. You can grab that link at the description below. Until then, be great, have a great week, and catch you in the next one.